So moving on, again, what analog missions are for. So analog missions are made to prepare us for near-term and future explorations to the near future space travel destinations, like the ones that we're looking right now at Moon and Mars. And those analog missions will play a really significant part in psychological, physical, and spaceflight research. The reason to do analog missions is very simple, and again, in this case, is threefold. Because the lower cost, that meaning that experiments that could be conducting in ISS versus an analog station are going to be far more cheaper, to conduct. Again, maybe research is not going to be identical because we are not going to have zero, microgravity environment, but still a lot of the research can be done here on the ground. Another thing is risk mitigation. So before we're going to go and explore these places like Moon and Mars and beyond, we need to mitigate the risk. And that means from medical, robotics, and other equipment to make sure that it's been tested, it's been validated before we can move on to the next stage and travel through space and take that space flight. Human factors, which again, it's the main piece, again, for analog missions. And today I'm going to be talking about that quite a bit in this talk. Human factors are the big one. Obviously, we talk about rocket science engineering and, that we need propulsion systems and how that ties into the space travel, going to Mars and, compressing the timelines for those propulsion systems to travel faster and go beyond Mars. But human factors play the crucial part in here, right? We can develop technology. Can we become better as humans, develop, certain traits from psychological aspects and, live sustainably in those planets, and again, because we're going to go there as random people probably most of the time. And we talking about, colonizing moments and how we live together as human species, right? Is it isolated? And how do we work together and build a community? And how do we interface with people and technology at the same time? So G.R.S.S helps to mitigate those risks. So again, doesn't matter how well trained astronauts are. And again, we have those astronauts right now from multiple countries and space agencies. Still, when we're going to move to the stage of, as we speak about colonizing Mars or going back to the moon and creating that sustainable living, it doesn't matter how well we're going to be prepared, again, because we see now with the missions that are happening in commercial space, just like Inspiration 4 or NS-18 with the Blue Origin research mission, those people are not really trained astronauts. Those are commercial astronauts, right? So those people are going to be the ones in the long term who are going to go to Mars also. So we want to make sure that those people are going to be prepared and we can mitigate the risks, again, for, say from psychology aspect and physical aspect, and we can, prepare those people for a long-term living. So again, some of the problems that we face in sleep loss are circadian desynchronization, work overload compound to issue, and may lead to performance decrements, adverse health outcomes, and compromised mission objectives, which are, of course, we don't want that. So again, we are going to be working on a lot of those research and developing research and looking for how to mitigate the risk around conflicts and developing technology and doing research based around that. So what makes the G.R.S.S different? Again, because there are more than a few analog stations right now globally. So for us, we know that, again, we're going to be living on Mars long term, right? So the key is to have long duration missions, which most of the time, current habitats, I would say in 80% of those habitats, they offer short-term missions. It could be something from a week to 2 weeks or maybe a month. So we want to go to 1 6-month plus missions, because obviously we're going to be living on Moon and Mars long term, hopefully, potentially. So that means we need to have long-term research to make sure that we, again, can develop systems, life support systems, psychology research, technology for space medicine, and those type of things. So for that, we need long-term missions. And again, with international crews, mixed crews from different backgrounds, different religions, ethnicities, and we're talking about something from 6 to 12 people. That's what the Georgian Research Space Station can support. Another thing that we're going to be focusing on is gym/fitness/research facility that we're developing as well. Because again, the fact is that because of the microgravity, the calcium balance, is getting kind of decreases over the time, and it stays here to 250 milligrams per day during the flight. So that means we need to work on that research, and we're going to be working closely with great medical institutions where we're going to be developing that research and working again from technology sides on research and development, how to develop systems that would facilitate the long-term travel to make sure that we can increase bone or just keep it stable when it comes to bone and muscle mass. So to support those efforts, we're going to be doing this type of research and going beyond that too. So one of the reasons to developing, again, a habitat and the problems that are currently occurring with the current habitats is quite high stressors related to habitability. Because the way habitats are currently built, they're limited in hygiene, chronic exposure to vibration and noise, limited sleep facilities, light and illumination, lack of privacy, and isolation from support systems. And again, we're looking to tackle that problem, and again, to put everything together and to create that living space that would be kind of Mars-like scenario, right? So they will be, supporting those people, but again, will have a very comfortable living environment. So G.R.S.S facilities will include, so some of the things here, as you see, it's going to be gym/fitness facility and electronics mechanical workshop, sleeping quarters, mission operations room, hygiene module, EVA area, biolab facility, aquaponics, and also hydroponics area, kitchen area, medical bay, airlock, and preparation room. So what's missing in the habitat? So one of the crucial aspects currently in habitats, because obviously they're not being realistic enough, as we spoke about, from a construction aspect, being too noisy, or again, environment is not created, to suit people to live in there long term, because the missions obviously it's short term, 1 or 2 weeks. So we are going to be tackling one of the biggest problems, which again, for most of the habitats, it's really pricey. So that's life support systems. But going long term, again, when it comes to long term exploration of space, we need to work on life support systems. So that means we're going to be working on life support system architectures for different space mission classes, assess life support system technologies. We're going to be performing life support system integrations, define and monitor life support system testing, understanding life support system dynamics of the potential impacts of new technology infusion, and we're going to be studying reliability maintenance of those subsystems as well. So again, the question is, how realistic can it be, right? Because even though we're on the ground, I think we would love to be in those type of environments that we would feel like we're on International Space Station or on Moon and Mars, right? So even though we are experiencing risks that are associated with spaceflight here on Earth, we're not experiencing those risks. I think it's possible to create missions that would be really close to, again, what you can potentially experiencing while being on International Space Station or just in space. So the ultimate goal is to create a functional prototype of an extraterrestrial habitat that we're currently working on, addressing the engineering, architectural, and scientific requirements for an exploration mission, and considering limitations imposed by Martian environment due to low pressure atmosphere and radiation. So obviously, so people can come in, they will be enclosed, and they will feel like they're actually in a very tight environment, but they can work together, collaboratively. We're talking 6 to 12 people for over long term, because there are scientific laboratories, again, just made them to do the research that they want. The facility is created, to suit people. So we need to work on that. So again, one of the quotes that I like from Werner von Braun, and again, as most of you know, he's NASA Engineering Program Manager and one of the chief architects of Apollo Saturn V rocket. So he said that human is not made for space, but with the help of biologists and medical doctors can be prepared and accommodated. So, and this is, again, one of the problems they're facing during the space flights. Again, the medical risks. And as was spoke before, that's kind of the main topic, because we can develop technology and the systems to take us to the orbit or to take us back to the moon and Mars. But how do we tackle problems from a medical perspective, right? So some of the problems that we're going to be facing is unpredictable accidents, isolation and sensory deprivation, microgravity 1/6 and 1/3 of comparing to Earth, artificial environment, and space radiation. So again, our facility is going to be working on that research closely with medical institutions, medical departments, people in medical space, so we can work on tackling these problems very closely with scientists and developing, again, systems and integrating technology and helping, again, to mitigate that risk of having potential risks during the space flight. So space medicine today and tomorrow. Currently, space medicine relies on the possibility of returning home with a few hours, again, because we have International Space Station, which is, again, currently not equipped with facilities to conduct surgical operations in microgravity, and again, or with advanced diagnostical machines like those found in most hospitals here on Earth. So again, the problems are zero gravity, power requirements, and size are most important limits. Again, so knowing those limits, that means we can find innovative solutions, and through the efforts that are now dedicated towards miniaturization, as you see here in the picture, teleoperated surgical robots and new technologies to decrease coalescence time and to prevent infections and support of today's low orbit outpost, as well as future human planetary missions. So this is one of the companies, it's called Virtual Incision, that developed this fist-sized robot in conjunction with NASA. And this has been a quite old project, but this is how they thought about, having those operations in microgravity. So you see this equipment is quite small. Still, it's just one of the pieces. There are many, many things that will occur during the space flight, or us living in that 1/6 or 1/3 of the gravity. So that means we need to continue to do research and develop technology that's necessary. Again, I'm going to use the word to mitigate the risk of having those critical situations on Moon and Mars. So again, supporting scientific research, just some of the parts that we're going to be working on is from psychology, physiology aspects, working on robotics, biology, geology, medicine, technology, and again, as I mentioned before, life support systems, which is really necessary for us to continue to do the research on that, to make sure that we can continue to focus on having sustainable living in space. Science communication is another thing which we're going to continue to do, because our goal is to make sure that barriers to entry, analog missions, and the space industry decrease over time, meaning more people can take part and play an important role towards humans becoming a multiplanetary species. So we're planning multiple campaigns during and in between those analog missions, where we're going to do public events, share knowledge and passion with other people, so that they can learn about that analog astronaut life. So how the experiments work, what do they eat, and again, how does the research work, and how do we add value to the current science and the space sector through that research. During the times of public outreach, we're also going to be focusing on young people, the next generation, who will be interested into learning more. And we will be offering workshops and lectures on topics from anything from astronauts, analog missions, astronomy, robotics, astrobiology, mechanic, electronic workshops, and other technology designs for space applications as well. So the question is, for people who are wondering now, if you're interested to participate in those analog missions, who is capable and who can participate in those? So again, it's all about developing safeguards for the effects of space flight, so we can create a sustainable living in other planets. So in general, we're looking for healthy, non-smoking people aged 20 to 55. Individuals also must pass physical and psychological assessment to qualify. And you see some of the criteria here: age 20 to 55, willingness to be confined in isolated area for extended periods of time. So anything from 1-2 weeks, because again, our focus is going to be mainly on 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, again, long periods of times. English language, again, written proficiency, physical and psychological fitness, because again, as I mentioned before, we're going to be doing a lot of groundbreaking research, working on some very innovative technology and approaches that haven't done before on analog stations. So we're going to be working very closely on psychology and physiology and developing systems and doing research. So we're looking for those physically prepared people, because the training, it might be a little bit intense sometimes. Technical skills demonstrated through an advanced education degree. Again, good communication skills, just being a team player, communicating well. And again, based on the mission requirements, we might have some additional criteria. Just want to finish up with a couple more slides. So space is the final frontier. Obviously, we're going through, here on the planet, we're going through a lot of problems that we need to solve. Some of those problems and some of the things that are being developed because of the space flight that today we take for granted are really benefiting here humankind. So we need to continue to focus on that innovation. And again, when it comes to the space flight mainly. So as you see here through the timeline, a lot of great things have been accomplished in the space industry. So the question, as we see here at the 2021 and beyond, so what's next? And again, we see, and you've probably seen many speakers here on the platform, or you're probably seeing what's happening right now in the space industry, the interest that's being created, and the companies, the new startups that are being created. So I think everybody's effort should be, to some degree, again, to work in the space industry and try to benefit the company, or work closely with that, or try to develop something, or do a research that's going to be focused on creating that sustainable living and having that plan B, if it's going to be moon or Mars or other planets, and just going beyond that. So the thing is, if you're looking to get more information, if you're looking to participate in future analog missions, or if you're looking to become a partner, because we're currently looking for partners as well, or if you want us to speak at the event, or just have questions, again, this is the links to the social media. Feel free to reach out via WhatsApp or send us an email if you have any questions as well.
Yes, that was an amazing initiative to bring about like a good sort of foundational training in all of the space exploration activities that we'll be having in all of the future, human future. That is encompassing the medicine aspects of it, or having the research, like starting off with the research and supporting such research activities, so that like in the future all of these will just add up, and finally we'll have a very good solution like to any possible issue that might reflect in the future. So with that, I'd want to thank you, Martinez, for that amazing session there.
Thank
And
you.
yes, so with that, we just done with one speaker. Now moving on to the second speaker for the day, we have Mr. Remco. Mr. Remco is an experienced space business professional with 15 plus years of experience in business analysis, process improvement, corporate communication, social media management, space outreach, space education, and training. With degrees in business administration and mechanical engineering, and having graduated from Space Studies program of the International Space University, Remco is regarded as a global social media influencer in the fields of space outreach, business startup management, and science communication. With quite an interesting bio itself, like I want to invite Mr. Remco to proceed with the session.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Vishesh, for this very kind introduction. And yes, it's all true. But today I'm going to talk to you as an entrepreneur who will introduce you to how to build a space CV. So really how to kickstart your career in space. Because if I understand correctly, I'm talking to a mix of students, of startup entrepreneurs, maybe aspiring entrepreneurs, people who are thinking of starting a career in space, perhaps as an entrepreneur, and I have just the right tips for you. So let me bring up my screen here. Okay, and I'm assuming you can see this. Yes, and I can see it myself now as well. So thank you very much. And I see I have a double logo because I included the logo in my slide. Sorry for that. But I'm talking to you today on behalf of my own company. So I'm a space entrepreneur. My company is called SpaceSide. My company is located in Estonia, but I myself talk to you right now from where I live in Oxford in the UK. Tips and tricks to build a space CV. And I have purposely made this a very personal talk because I think by sharing stories on how, in this case, I ended up in the space industry, I think there's a lot of lessons learned for other people who have the same aspiration as me to build a career in the space industry. And as you correctly heard in the introduction, I don't have a space background necessarily. I have an undergraduate degree in mechanical engineering, and I have a Master of Arts degree in business administration. And so I'm not a space engineer, yet I am very proudly working in the space sector. So let me share with you, pressing the wrong button here, a little bit of a personal story on my career observations, what I found out in the last, well, I've been working in the space industry for over 10 years now. Thank you. Now the logo is single. Thank you for doing that. I've been working in the space industry for 10 years, but before that I worked in other industries. And there's a few lessons there that I think you can share. So let me just go through these points in sort of explaining what this means. First of all, I have found that it matters less what diplomas you have, as long as you have them. If you want to work in an industry that is very high tech, that is on the brink of human performance and of human knowledge, you have to have diplomas. What type of diploma matters less than that you have them. This is an industry where knowledge is appreciated. Secondly, if you're still in school right now, your future job probably does not yet exist. When I was in school, social media entrepreneur in space certainly wasn't a job that existed, because when I was in school, social media didn't exist. And in fact, when I was in school, the internet didn't even exist. So the job that I'm in right now, I could never have imagined when I was in school. So there are options that you may not even know about at the moment, and I'll get back to that later. Also, and this is very personal, it's never too late to change a career that doesn't make you happy. I was in a career in banking and insurance. Now, to many people, that's a very exciting industry, but to me, it was rather boring. Banking and insurance is not a very imaginative industry, and I've always been the space geek that I hope that this audience is as well. And I wasn't happy working in banking and insurance. And I found that out rather late in my career. I'd been working for 20 years as a leasing specialist. I was a specialist in financial services in a leasing company, and that was great. But at some point, I was no longer happy, and I made the change to space. And it's never too late to change a career that doesn't make you happy at any point in your career. Because fun is such an important element of your career. And when you're in university, when you're in school, that doesn't sound like the first thing you think about when you are planning your career. But once you move on into a job, you will find out that the most satisfying thing in a job is actually to have fun. Your career should be about what makes you happy. Very important. We always tend to think that a career is all about making money and making sure that you can sustain yourself and your family. And that is very true. But don't forget happiness. If you're stuck in a job that you're unhappy with, you're not going to have a happy life no matter how much money you have. Because if you do what you love, you won't work a single day in your life. Of course, you will. You will spend lots of hours in your career, but it doesn't feel like work. It feels like you're going on holiday every day because you do the thing that you love most in your life. And that, to me, is a very important element of the career that I have right now. And I make enough money to sustain myself, but in addition, I work in the space industry, which is the coolest place in the world to work. If you're not yet part of that, the magic happens outside your comfort zone. Don't be afraid to step out of a comfortable position that you may have, but you're not happy in. Just go for it. You will never regret it. So a little bit about my career in space. As I said, I've always been a space geek, but I wasn't an engineer. When I was 16, 17 years old, I was in high school. I went to the open day of my local university when I lived back in the Netherlands, which was the Delft University of Technology. Maybe you've heard of it. They do a really, really good space engineering course. I went there to see if that was something for me when I finished high school, whether I would go on to do aerospace engineering. And I did not like what I saw. I saw math, I saw physics. I didn't really see any rockets. I didn't see any satellites. I only saw maths and physics, and I wasn't that good at maths and physics. I had a passion for space, but I wasn't good. So I decided to go to business school in the end, which did make me happy. And I did an undergraduate in mechanical engineering, but I found out I'm not an engineer. I went to business school after that, and I worked in international business. But at some point, I changed to the industry because I love the rockets, I love the technology, I love the satellites. And the technology is there, but what I found when I entered the space industry, that it's really the people that make the industry. It's really the people that make it worthwhile working here. I've never worked in such a great, friendly environment where everybody basically is my friend in this very small industry. And what binds these people is a passion for space. Space is all about passion. If you don't have a passion for space, maybe there are better industries where you can make more money, where you can do other things. Space is really bound together by the passionate people that live there. Space is also very international. You have to think outside your national framework if you want to be successful in space. It's highly international. It's highly interdisciplinary. One of the most international industries in the world, I'd say. When you work in space, you will meet people from all over the world, which I think is really cool. Also important to realize, which I didn't realize when I made the choice of my university, is that space is not just rocket science. Space is so much more than just rockets and satellites, so much more than just technology. And I'll get back to that in a little bit. What's also true, especially in space at the moment, is that space will need thousands of new people. Space is developing like it has never before. There are so many opportunities that thousands of new people will be needed in the next decade. And those people don't all work for NASA. They don't all work in the United States. They don't all work in Russia or in Europe. We need people from all countries. And I put the Indian flag here because India is one of the most promising nations in space in that regard. So you haven't even seen the beginning of what is possible in space, also in a country in India. And also for people with other backgrounds than space science and engineering. And again, I'll get back to that. And becoming active in space is much easier than you may think. So again, my next slides will show you that there's a place in space for everyone. So in my next slides, I have 11 simple tips for anyone who is looking to build a career in space, whether as an entrepreneur or in any other shape or form. So let me start with the first one. As I said before, space is not just rocket science. It's not just engineering. If 100% of people in space were engineers, we would never have gone to the moon. We would never have launched satellites, because it is so much more. In space, to make space work, just like any other industry, we need all disciplines. We need people from all backgrounds to make this big machine happen. We need lawyers, we need architects, we need data specialists, we need application specialists, we need doctors, people specializing in space medicine. We need people who specialize in business and management, kind of like myself. We need people who specialize in communication, in SciComm. We even need people specializing in art to paint this complete picture. So if you are in any discipline that you can think of and you want to work in space, don't despair. There is a place in space for someone with your background. Start building your space network early. There are so many opportunities for networking in different organizations, and the ones that I mentioned, maybe my presentation is a little bit focused on the Western world and on Europe, where I happen to live. But there are so many opportunities, including SSERD, that bring people together in networks that can share their passion together, but can also exchange tips on careers in this area. The Space Generation Advisory Council is a great one for students or people who are leaving university to meet people from all over the world. SEDS, I believe SEDS, the Student Association for Space Students, exists in India as well. There's things like Women in Aerospace. There's all kinds of different organizations that you can become a member of, often for free. Become a member of the Space Generation Advisory Council is free, and they organize great events where you can meet each other and talk about your space career. If you find that difficult, or if you don't really know where to start, get in touch with the space professionals. As I said, we are a very friendly bunch. We like to talk about our work. We like to share our passions with people. Get in touch with them. There's many organizations that offer mentorships. Space for Women network by the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs is one. The Space Generation Advisory Council has a mentoring network. There are different ways to get in touch with people who are already in the industry, perhaps with a similar background as yourself, that you can get in touch with, who can give you very valuable tips for your career, specific for people from your background, from your study, from your country, etc. These people are out there. Don't be shy to get in touch with them. Now, I talk to many people who say, yes, but in my country, that's not the case for India, but I talk to people from all over the world. They say, yes, but my country isn't active in space at all. And that's the great thing about what's happening in space right now, is even if a country or a region or an area is not active in space at all, so there is no space industry in that particular area that you may find yourself in, there are plenty of opportunities right now to make your country a spacefaring nation. I was in Mauritius a few years ago, which is a small island in the Indian Ocean. Very small, very small community. No space program of itself. It is very small to do that. Yet they developed their own CubeSat, and CubeSats are a really good way for young people to get in touch with space technology and to get yourself acquainted with how space technology works. And this satellite from Mauritius, just a simple 1U, very small 10 by 10 by 10 centimeter CubeSat, was launched recently. And now Mauritius is a spacefaring nation, and there's people in the local university who are in mission control for this particular satellite, and they established a beginning for a space industry. The same in Costa Rica, the middle one. The same in Estonia. Small countries that now have their own satellites in space, thanks to university students who took the initiative. Attend space events. There are so many space events all around the world that you can find, that you can become part of, either in real life or virtual, like this one. This is a space event where you can perhaps meet a few people, but there are so many other ways. You can look at spaceagenda.com for upcoming events. There's the International Astronautical Congress, which is a really big one that's happening every year. It's happening next week in Dubai, as a matter of fact. And there are lots of space events that you can attend as a student, as a space enthusiast, that you can be part of. You can get to know the people who are active there, and you don't have to speak at these events. You can just listen in, get to know the people, and see who you could get in touch with, perhaps. If you take it to the extreme, and this is what I did, you can go back to school. As I said, my career was in banking and insurance. I knew nothing about space, but I had this passion, but I didn't feel comfortable to start applying for jobs in the space industry. So I went to the International Space University. They run a 9-week summer program every year. And I was lucky enough, and I have to admit, some luck and perhaps some help from your network is needed there. But you can use these opportunities to retrain yourself and to add that space element to your career. If you're a lawyer, you can go to the International Institute of Air and Space Law. Those are formal education opportunities, but there are lots of MOOCs, online trainings, many of which are for free. One that I highlight here, it's a little bit hidden in the background, but it's the Copernicus MOOC. So it's a training, I think it's an 8-hour online training consisting of several modules that will tell you everything about Earth observation and the opportunities of Earth observation for entrepreneurs who want to do something with space data. Another one, and I know these exist in India quite a bit, are hackathons specializing in space, often based on space data, so based on Earth observation data that is made available by organizations like NASA, like the European Space Agency, like the European Union Copernicus program, data that is accessible to students all over the world, and you are given that data and tasked, often in a weekend, to build an application, build a useful application around that space data. Those things, those hackathons, those events are a great way to get, again, yourself acquainted with the data that we have from space, the data that's available, what is there that you can use to start thinking about a company, but also the people who can help you make something useful out of that data and help you develop ideas on how you could even start your own business. And the whole idea of these hackathons often is to find those key ideas for people to build a business around. And if you participate there, you will see that there's a lot of help available in those areas. And then you can think about starting your own space business. Personally, I work a lot with space data, with Earth observation data, again, which is freely available. Check out the Copernicus program. The data is available not just to the European Union, but to the whole world. And anyone in the world can use that data for free to build an application around. If you go to something like the Sentinel Hub, which is a portal that makes that data available, and there are many Copernicus portals around the world that you can use to start coming up with your ideas, perhaps go to a hackathon. And then there are organizations like accelerators, incubation centers, space camps, all kinds of organizations. And I'm sorry, this is a bit European biased, but these exist either on a worldwide level or specifically for India as well. Incubators, accelerators that can help you turn an idea into a viable business. Maybe that's a step too far for many of you, but this is a very simple one. Volunteer in space NGOs. The prime example of a very active space NGO, of course, is SSERD that we're talking to now. So SSERD is always looking for volunteers, for people who can help organize events. And that's just one of the organizations that is active. The biggest one, and I used to be the director for a few years, and we just passed World Space Week, but I think this still classifies as a World Space Week event, is World Space Week. World Space Week is the biggest public space event in the world, and they're always looking for people to organize an event. And organizing an event can be as simple as bringing a few people together over drinks, over a meal, in a classroom to talk about space. It doesn't have to be tens of thousands of people. It can start really simple, and you can get yourself acquainted with it by organizing a small scale event, perhaps at a school or a university or an astronomy club, and then gradually building that out. The Space Generation Advisory Council I mentioned before are always looking for volunteers to do things. There's lots of volunteering opportunities that are great for students. Another thing that you can do, and in a way I did that as well, is do it yourself. Start with yourself. Start writing blogs about your passion for space. Organize space talks at your local school, where you went when you were younger, at your university, at your astronomy club. Write blogs for them or for other organizations. Propose to present at webinars, perhaps. Or make your own videos about your passion. There's loads of people who are doing that, and it's a great way to get your voice out there, get your face out there. If you're on TikTok by any chance, make sure you look up Astro Kirsten. She's an Australian astronomer, and she makes brilliant TikTok videos. I mean, I'm not active on TikTok, I'm probably too old for that, but she is absolutely brilliant in bringing her passion for astronomy to, in her case, hundreds of thousands of people, and anyone can really do that. So you can start here and now on your own Facebook or Twitter or TikTok or Instagram account, not a problem at all. A platform like LinkedIn allows you to start writing blogs. An organization like SpaceUp allows you to practice your talks and bring people together. And an organization like SSERD can help you get your face into webinars or into local events in your local environment. And then my last tip, and I'm really happy that we had a talk about analog missions as the first talk in this little blog, is join an analog mission. If you want to be an astronaut, I have to admit that your chances are pretty slim. You have to go through a very thorough selection process, and in countries like India, the number of astronauts that are needed every year in Israel is unfortunately still extremely limited. However, there are great opportunities, as we've heard before, in analog missions, in doing analog studies in universities or with analog study organizations like the Georgian Research Space Station. But there are other examples. Right now, the Austrian Space Forum, the ÖVF, that you see in the right-hand top corner there, together with an Israeli organization called DMARS, are doing a long-term several-week study in the desert in Israel using a space station or analog station they built where several analog astronauts are simulating a mission to Mars. But they're not the only ones. There's the G.R.S.S of the Space Society, which is in the United States. There's the Lunaris Research Center in Poland. There's Habitat Marte in Brazil. And now we know that there's the Georgian Research Space Station in Georgia. And there are initiatives in India. And as I said before, if these initiatives are not there in India, you're kindly invited to start your own analog research organization and start doing analog missions in India. Not a problem at all. So to cut a long story short, I summarized a few things here, which I think may be something that that is better shared afterwards. But I have a long list that kind of summarizes what I've just said. But I know this was a lot of information already. So in my last slide, I would like to invite you to link to me on LinkedIn or link with me on Twitter. These are my the two key places where I talk a lot about space outreach and about space careers. And I hope to see you again in the little discussion that we are going to have afterwards. So thank you very much for your attention, and back to the moderator.
Yes. So some keen insights that you provided there, like either you follow path based on your passion or you create one. That is up to an individual. Either you decide that is you have to do something, you have to take one step. If not, there is nothing in the future. Yes.
Exactly.
That is a key take there. I guess that was quite interesting as well to hear from you. Yes. So with that, we move ahead with the third speaker for today. And thank you, Mr. Remco, for that. We'll join you back in a few minutes for the mini panel. Yes. So I'd want to introduce the third speaker, an interesting speaker again. We've got Valentin Benoit, who is a 27-year-old multi-entrepreneur. He has several activities and positions related to tech and innovation, with a few being Innovation Procurement Officer at L'Oreal Group, Head of Business at Little Big Connection, a major WW market for IT and digital consultants. He also founded and led companies such as Paris Privé, a luxury event agency, and the blockchain company, the blockchain POC provider. His most relevant and current activity is as a CEO and founder at RIDE, which is a space tech company that aims to digitalize the access to space and simplify the whole of launch management between satellites and rockets. To this end, he works with several Indian space organizations such as ISRO, NSIL, Skyroot, Bellatrix, and Agnikul. Well, it is my honor to have you here, Mr. Valentin, and stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Vishish, for this very kind introduction. I'm very glad to be here with you today and and this wonderful audience. I'm going to share my screen right now. All right. Okay, so today we're gonna discuss digitalization of access to space, launch vehicles, satellite operators, and launch management. But I mainly wanted to focus on the methodology I adopted a few years ago to get that idea and to iterate and to get it done actually, because I know that there are a lot of students here, a lot of people that might think about creating their own company, and a lot that will be great entrepreneurs. So instead of just discussing the topics of access to space and the company, I wanted to highlight what step I use and how I came up with the idea and then the execution. So in few words, RIDE is a digital platform that empower space launch as a service. So in other words, it's a new way to approach the launch process between all the evaluations of access to space, of course, launch vehicle, but also integrators, in-orbit deployers, and space insurance on one side. And on the other side, the requester for such a solution, such as academic CubeSat initiatives, and commercial constellation. But first, I wanted to explain in few words what is the lean startup approach. So it's an approach that put the market and the customer at the heart of the approach. It has been written in a great book from Eric Ries. I have it here. As you can see, there is a lot of post-it and marks in the book. So I'd advise all of you guys to read that book because it's really the Bible for such a subject. And basically the approach it's quite easy, but it's all about the rigorous and stick to it that will make you succeed on your ideation for your startup. It's based on the learn, build, and measure loop, where for any aspect of your ID, business, model, product, and everything, you have to test and get some market feedback from your user. And the last thing I wanted to add for that approach is that in any field, not only professional but also personal, I got that mojo, which is do not assume, ask, because you will be surprised that just by asking some stuff to people about how they work, is there time for you? Could they explain to you something? Are they willing to buy or whatever? You would be surprised by just asking that how you would get great feedback and great data. So let's start with the first stage, is that just simply meet your market. And I'm quite glad that Remco just made that presentation before me, because I fully agree with what he said. Actually, I was, when I quit my precedent job, when I quit my last job, and I wanted to create a business in space field, I didn't know anyone in space. So I started to involved in some side project, such as space generation. He told about that, such as Acting Space. Also, he told about that. And I've been to ESA program, such as a Space Solution and ESA Business Incubator. So all of these stuff you have to, all of the stuff you have to remember is that you just go to see your market, met some people, met some company. For my personal business, before anything, any idea, I've met more than 30 launch vehicles, 65 small sat operators all over the world, and more than 25 agencies. And my approach was always the same. Hello, I'm a young entrepreneur. I got some question about space business and access to space. Who do you have 30 minutes to help me and just to discuss about that? And you would be more than surprised that just with that approach, people are quite okay for meeting you and discuss the topics you want to discuss. Of course, you will get some, I'd say, you will fail sometime, but most of the time, people are more than willing to talk about themselves and to talk about their company. If we look at what I got and what feedback I got from the SmallSat market, as you know, there is a huge trend regarding access to space right now that is called new space, and we count more than 500 new constellation and operators to be created and to be active right now. That represents something between 8,000 and 50,000 small sat and nanosats to be launched within 10 years, which is huge in comparison of the 6,000 we sent in the past 50 years. And what's fascinating is that there are a lot of non-space countries entering that market, a lot of initiative all around the world. Remco again was mentioning Mauritius. That's funny because I've met Mauritius CubeSat project a few months ago, and yes, that's fascinating how now there is no barriers for access to space and for developing satellites and initiative. So what we see now in terms of habits regarding the space business approach is that companies and association and student projects simply want space to be easy. And so we saw that a huge growth of what we call business as a service solution, which is that you can do a cherry picking regarding the information you need, regarding the service you need, regarding the added value you are searching, and you will always find some great solution and very flexible and agile solution. And if we are now focused about the main pain I identified with this market analysis was mainly about the launch aspect for small sat operators, because the main mission and the main jobs of small sat operators is first to design and develop a satellite. It can last between 3 years to 10 years for the bigger satellites, and then to operate the satellite in orbit and get its data from its operation in space. And between both, you have a highly critical step, which is the launch, and the launch is composed of 5 to 6 steps from the launch vehicle. From the launch vehicle selection to the deployment system analysis, compatibility test, and integration operation, the space insurance, because I don't know if you know, but as a satellite operators in most of the countries, you have to insure your satellite in space, mainly especially for third-party reliability. Then, of course, the logistic, the customs, the export license, the license, and all the regulation, and all these steps are pretty painful, fastidious, and long for non-trained new entrants and satellite operators. And today, what I learned from them is that they were facing a dilemma because they have only two extremely different choices regarding the launch management. Either they were doing it by themselves, by recruiting a team, by training some people to make to manage the launch internally and all these steps, or the second option they got, that they could go to what we call the launch broker, that are a company that could take your brief and get back to you in 2-3 weeks or months, and then propose you a solution for launching your satellite, a turnkey solution, very vertically solution, and in some way kind of a black box, so that you can manage any aspect of the launch. So both of the options were showing some issue and some pain for the satellite operator, and it was not optimized at all. Especially when you see how much it costs for launching a satellite. Let's say for a small satellite of a tiny CubeSat of 1U, it's around 100k euro, and it could go up to, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 million of euro or dollars to launch a satellite in orbits. And what is especially unknown, actually, within the small sat operators ecosystem, is the cost waterfall of a launch. Most of the company mainly think that it's only about the rental of the launch capacity, which is of course a big part of the launch, but depending on the size and the weight of the satellite, some other additional costs can represent a lot actually within the total cost of launch. For example, insurance is something between 10 to 20% of the cost. Launch interface, deployment system, and integration, something around 15 to 30% of the launch. Same for logistic license and so on. So when you see what's at stakes, and when you see that they can't find a proper solution to manage easily by themselves the launch, that was the first feedback from the market, just simply by applying lean startup methodology to ask people what they face, what were their daily work, and so on, that I could identify a pain there. And now, if we focus on launch market, which include launch vehicle and deployment, in-orbit deployment system, such as OTV or separation systems, we see a huge change in that market. There are a lot of new launch vehicle to be built and commercialized within the 5 years, and there are plenty in India, plenty in US, in China, in Europe. So far, to date, we have 25 active and operational launch vehicles all around the world, and we count almost 200 launch vehicle projects ongoing right now at different stage of maturity, of course. But within these 200, 40 launch vehicles are super mature and willing to launch a satellite within a year and a half. For example, Skyroot in India is one of them, and yeah, there are like 40 plus launch vehicles to arrive on the market, and that is a big change on the market, and we see a huge gap, let's say, in price between very aggressive actors and very conservative actors regarding price of launch. The criteria for launching a satellite is the price per kilogram, and right now we see a factor of 10 between the cheapest option and the most expensive option. So that's something that has been never seen in space business. Additionally, we see now a new modularity, let's say, of launch scenario, because according to you want to go on a very specific orbits, you could have choice between a micro launcher that will provide you a dedicated launch to your specific orbits, or you could go also have a different scenario with a big heavy launch vehicle that have in-orbit transportation vehicle inside, like a modularity third stage that will, let's say, put you in the last orbit of your choice after the commissioning of your satellite. So we see a huge growth and diversification of launch offer and service right now that also bring a new problem. Again, by discussing and getting some feedback from the market and from launch vehicle, what I could identify as a big pain is that due to the arrival of small satellite, their return on investment to get a contract for a small sat was quite bad, and at the end it was kind of incompatible with their classic acquisition strategy. Because the turnover they got from the launch contract was almost immediately lost in terms of cost of structure they had to spend to get that contract, especially regarding the competition. They spend months and people for scouting new clients, to answer quotation, to negotiate with them, to acknowledge them for a technical license and a requirement that they were supposed to get regarding access to space. And at the end, we see that some launch vehicles weren't even treating with a small sat because for them it was not profitable at all. So there were a big pain regarding profitability of working with small clients when we were on the side of the launch vehicle. So once you've done your market analysis and your discussion, and you get lot of feedbacks from the market, it's time for let's say sum up your assumption and try to work on a solution. So regarding that aspect, I had 3 macro assumptions regarding access to space and a new way of working between between launch vehicle and satellite operators. The first one, that SmallSat commercial launch is going to become a commodity. So because of standardization of standard satellites, because of democratization of access to space, sooner or later we will buy on the shelf, like we buy a plane ticket, or like we rent a cab. We'll buy on the shelf launch for SmallSat operators. Secondly, because the huge growth of new entrants regarding access to space and launch vehicle, we are now watching and living a very interesting step regarding launch business. Is that we observe a shift from an offer-driven market to a demand-driven market. Since the beginning of modern space, everything was linked and concentrated on the launch capacity, because there were only few actors, no more than 10, and everything was dictated by them regarding frequency, pricing policy, level of service, contract, capability to be launched, and so on. And now we see that we are shifting from a oligopoly to a real competitive environment where the main focus will be on the demand. So now when you are a CubeSat student project, you have the choice between 1, 2, 5 launch solution, and tomorrow 10, maybe 20 launch solution. And that's a big change in the way that the market is evolving and working, especially because now the launch vehicle will have to adapt their offer and to be, let's say, quite adaptable and flexible with the demand. And last but not least, I was very surprised to see that despite rocket science is a super advanced and technological market and environment, almost nothing was digitalized, and it was super hard to get a proper and easy and reliable information. I had to spend weeks of mail and discussion and told to get some information that in other business you got just in one click on internet. So all these assumptions, I will have to test them, and I have tested them so that I could better work on the business. And yeah, once you had some micro assumption, you can get some micro assumption, and to finally identify the real pain of the client, and then again test it with your market. So for nano satellite operator, it was mainly to secure and lower the time to launch by themselves, and not with intermediaries. And for launch vehicle, it was to optimize their customer acquisition cost without intermediaries. So once you have met your market, get some feedbacks, tested some assumption, and iterate with your assumptions, it's time for a proposed solution. Once you got a real problem to solve, and that brought us to Ride, which is that is a digital platform that proposes a fair, reliable, and transparent way to address SmallSat operator launch request on the launch vehicle side and on the SmallSat operator side, to manage a end-to-end launch process on an easy way by themselves. So that is Ride. It's now live for the past 8 months, and we have registered more than 150 companies on the platform, such as launch vehicle and satellite operator. And again, it's not because you propose a solution that you have to stop to apply lean startup methodology. Again, lean startup methodology is very adapted to the idea and to the execution, because idea is nothing with a great execution regarding entrepreneurship and company creation. So I have selected a panel of early adopter and testing company. These are pure example, but it's quite representative of my market. And then I provide them the beta version so that they can test it, get some feedback to me, and then I work on the second version with their feedback. And every time it was the same approach: learn, build, and measure. Especially for also the business model, you can adapt that methodology for everything: ID, business model, product, recruitment, and so on. And I was hesitating, let's say that, between 4 business model: a transactional fee, some additional services for like launch coordination, some consulting and studies, because there are a lot of data within the platform, so I could use them for consulting and reports. And then a business model based on business facilitation and introduction. And I've been testing these four business model with my market using the lean startup methodology. And at the end, it was clear that everything was more the market was more open, let's say, to a pure transactional fee, and everything else had to be free and available on the platform. So no registration fee on the platform, no subscription, and so on. So thank you very much for your attention. If you want to connect, you can find me on LinkedIn, and I will be more glad to discuss with you further topics of digitalization of access to space.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Valentin, for that segmented explanation of how like the whole of satellite business and like the methodologies or the plans that you can use, like you can select, and also the economic aspects of having like along with relating all of it to the market aspects and all of that. So yes, so with that, like having each speaker completed their own sessions, I'd now want to invite Mr. Remco and Mr. Martinez back on stage, with each providing their own perspective. That is, we had Mr. Remco telling about like starting off with a passion that is needed. Passion is everything. That's what gets you started. Then we also had Mr. Martinez, who spoke of like identifying the problems at the end and trying to get their solution, like either by research, any method. But then you have to start off with something, like get the problem, address it. And we also had finally Mr. Valentin summing all of that up with the current market scenarios and all of that. So yes, hello again, all of you. Yes. So the first question that I've got for you is like taking first step is not only based on the financial aspects generally, but also the mental confidence that a person has. Of like, if you want to start off as an amateur entrepreneur, you need that confidence within you. Like if the like you've got the sponsors, or not only sponsors, you've also got the people like fundraisers and all that. You without starting off with anything, you don't like. For example, if you've got a product, only then will the people fund a project. But then being a fresh entrepreneur, you don't have anything to show. So how will a person like begin if there is no support from someone else?
Yeah, if I may pick that up. Actually, my presentation was all about that. It is, and Valentin kind of confirmed that it is about reaching out. You have to ask those questions. If you have a good idea, share it with people. Share it with people who may agree with you that it's a good idea, or may help you improve your idea if it maybe has some drawbacks. Those people may also be able to help you in the next step in finding, well, as you say, funding is usually not the first thing that you have to worry about. It's really about the developing your idea and making sure it's a good idea, and thinking in solutions, not thinking in products or services, but find a problem that needs to be solved, find a market for something, find the people who may be willing to pay for the product that you're developing, and make sure those people exist. I have seen too many, especially engineers, coming up with great solutions for something that wasn't really a problem at all. So they have a great solution for a problem that doesn't exist. So make sure there is a problem that you solve with your solution. Money in that case is usually not the most difficult. It is, as you say, it's the confidence to develop, but it's also the confidence to change the idea that you may have. There is no space company in the world that completely developed the first idea they had. The company that you end up with, the startup that you end up with, is always different from your first idea, and you have to be open to changing your own ideas to make things successful. And you need other people to do that.
So, Mr. Martinez or Valentin, do you want to hear some? Yes.
Yeah, I totally agree with Remco. And you'd be surprised how people are open to help, or people are like to be involved into some common adventures and entrepreneurial journey. So I know that confidence could be a big topic, and I'm not saying that it's easy. It's at the beginning, I was so terrified to call some Chinese companies, to call some unknown people, and just to how do we do? What should we talk about? But most of the time people get me confidence back. It's because of the people I was discussing with that mainly I trust to be more confident, and then to see, okay, it's not that complicated. And at the end, some people I discussed with like months ago call me back, send me some information by email. Okay, they connected me with other people, and so on. And it's all about starting a dynamic, and then you will be surprised how it could get bigger and bigger, as simple as that. And again, fundraising it's later. It's all about motivation, about patience. But yeah, of course, sooner or later you will need money, but not for the beginning of the journey.
Okay, so Mr. Martinez, you want to shed some light on it? Your perspectives?
Sure. Yeah. So as people here talk about how do you build a company in this industry, obviously for me it's a little bit easier to talk because I had businesses in different industries for quite a long time. So this was not a first business, and I think what could help for people, and I'll give them some hope. So if you're looking to be a business owner in the space industry, you don't have to be a scientist, because I'm not a scientist. But what you need to have some certain business traits. You need to have skill sets. And again, the question is, how do you develop that? If it's through the time developing businesses, and maybe space industry is not going to be the first industry that you're going to be part of, you can choose that. But again, as Valentin is saying, going and talking with the people, I mean, it's quite hard, especially if you don't have an experience. That means you're going to be making a lot of mistakes. And again, it's still quite small industry. So you don't want to make a bad name for yourself if you're going to make a lot of stupid mistakes while doing so. So having some solid testing ground that you can go and build up your skills, obviously having books and mentors and coaches and building your personal network to increase that confidence, which getting built through the knowledge and certainty helps, but you just need an experience overall. So that's how we do it. But look, if people want to start right away in the space industry, look, there are many great examples that people started, did it, and they can be one of those people. So I don't want to discourage anybody. So go for it.
Yes. So,
And just
mhm.
don't get us wrong. We are not saying that you have to quit everything from one day to another and go meet everyone. It could be side project, it could be in association, it could be in hackathon, and everything. Start step by step, but start one day, and then when you feel that you are in the right direction, that is the momentous in sometimes, go for it. But yeah, don't quit your studies so far, and don't quit your job if you want to go step by step.
So it's more like exploring each step one by one, trying out different avenues as much as possible, and then moving ahead. Yes, having a sturdy step, each step at a time. Yes. So are there any hidden challenges involved in in a startup? If you have a startup, are there any hidden challenges which generally people do not know about while getting started with it, but then later face it?
So I can talk about that, and I speak about that a lot. So I think the main challenge is going to be for the people who are looking to get started. They think because they get this title, founder, CEO, entrepreneur, which is a mistake, because they think that they're supposed to do everything by themselves, which again is the biggest mistake. We see the biggest companies out there in the space industry. There is no one person. Maybe there was one person or two with an idea, but the company got developed through the number of great people that got involved with it. So the hidden kind of mistake or just the hidden obstacle that would be in that is partnerships and creating those in the right way. Because I speak about that all the time. Partnership is just like marriage. You need to go to more than a couple of dates before you get married, right? So it's same with the partnership. So make sure you get the right partners on board, because if not, that will cost you a lot of time and money.
So
Yep, I can continue on that, because that's very true. Find the right people around you, and I think that is a theme that all three of us have now mentioned. Is find people who can help you. Find people who are smarter than you about certain aspects of your business. If you don't have the knowledge, find someone who has, and first of all, talk to this person. And it all comes down to what you were saying all the way in the beginning, Vishesh. You have to have some confidence. But if you have a good idea and people confirm that you have a good idea, that confidence should build. Also, in line with what Martinez was saying, don't be afraid to make mistakes. I mean, we all make mistakes. You never end up with the first idea as your business. But if you do make a mistake, try to make those mistakes as early in the process as possible when not so many people, and especially not so much money, is involved. And feel free to experiment. That's why hackathons are so great, because hackathons is like a totally safe background. There are no strings attached. There's no big money invested. If you fail at those stages. Fail at the very first person you talk to who tells you that your idea is maybe not as good as you thought yourself. And maybe if you make 1 or 2 adjustments, it already becomes better. So allow yourself that feedback and incorporate that feedback as early as you can. And if it's a bad idea, just acknowledge that it's a bad idea as early as you can before there is money at stake.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely better to take a quick action, a quick decision, because you'll know whether it's a good or bad decision, instead of spending weeks or days to analyze it in order to be sure to take the right decision. Because as you can't be sure before taking a decision. So take the decision quickly. Of course, analyze it a little bit before, and just don't take it like a flip a coin and take the decision. But take it, and then you will get some market feedback for sure. And regarding the challenge that I face right now, it's kind of related to what we just said before. We are now growing quite fast. We are less than 10 people in the company, and we are trying to hire more people, especially on the IT department of our software. But right now, the main challenge I have is to prioritize, get the right priority, because I have a backlog of this action to do, and so far it's quite hard to choose between one and another decision. So get the right priority some way could be quite hard if you are not if you are not enough people in the company, basically.
So, like listening to your answers, it's more like all three of you are in sync with each of you, comprehending the each others and all that. It's good to hear that from you people. So that is like, just as you said, like moving with the decision and then failing at times and all of that. So people generally start out with one particular idea. Like entrepreneurs generally start with one idea, it's planning, but then they also have a plan B with them. So in case like having a plan B, does that in any way affect their performance in plan A? Like they've got this plan B, okay, fine. I've got this plan B. If I fail at plan A, I've got no issues. I always got a backup. So should they have a plan B always in this business industry, or like should they totally focus?
Yeah, if I may, I'd say yes and no. Because if you have plan A and it doesn't work, you have to have plan B, but you also have to have plan C and plan D and plan E. And those things are not always obvious in the beginning. You don't need to prepare all those different options, all those different plans, because if one thing changes, one thing that you didn't think about, you can throw them all. So these plans kind of develop. So you start with plan A and it will become plan B, which will become plan C when you receive input from others, when you receive feedback, when you test out your idea in the real world, it will change. No idea will survive a confrontation with the real world. And that is okay. The key thing is that you're open to that. Don't stick to your original idea. I have seen people working on their idea, basically pulling a dead horse, and you have to be open-minded enough to say, okay, this doesn't work, I get feedback, but if I change a few things, it might work. And plan B will turn into plan C, and plan C will turn into plan D, and you may end up with something completely different, but you will end up with something that will actually attract the money. Because what you said in the beginning, many entrepreneurs worry about the money, about their funding, about getting money to fund their idea. If you have a good idea, funding is not the issue. It's the idea itself that is the key question. When you have a good idea, the money will come at some point anyway, but you need to reach out and you need to be flexible to change your plans over time.
So I would love to add some stuff to what Remco was talking, because I can agree to the point as he's saying, plan A or plan B, do you need that or not? Again, depends. Everybody has different, circumstances and situations. But I think a lot of people make another mistake, which is diving too fast into the subject, because obviously now, with this event, you see a lot of people as speakers and people participating, so they're seeing that this industry is becoming very popular. But it wasn't, just a few years back, it wasn't that popular. So we see many startups are just rising now. So with that interest, there is a lot of people who are diving into the industry without doing a thorough research. It's either on a, consumer demographics, is the product going to fit the demand, and the supply, how's that going to look like, how you can position in the marketplace, and doing a real thorough research. So I think if people would do that in the beginning, then they would then they will have to less think about the plan B, and other scenarios that will just confuse them with the time. So, but as Remco also said, you need to have multiple approaches and multiple cases and scenarios, because you cannot depend, as I talked about the marriage before, you cannot depend on one source of anything unless it's marriage. So you need to have multiple customers, multiple partners, and multiple cases, because some people will drop out eventually, and your business and your idea might suffer. But again, coming back to the point, if you just do a thorough research, you prepare well before even executing on an idea, you could be pretty good.
Yes.
I have done that much thing to add. It's plan B is a very personal question. I mean, and I don't want to influence anyone. If I talk about my personal experience, I decided to not get plan B at all, because I wanted to be willing to be absolutely all in. I mean, in the topics, and knowing that I could have another solution could put me in a position where it made me take the wrong decision, because I wouldn't be willing to lose everything in some way. And I think so at some stage of the company, you have to be all in your company. So I decided to not take plan B, but again, it's only personal. And I know also entrepreneurs that got 2 products together, 3 products together, to have a company and a job aside. It kind of worked also, but it's only about me.
Yes. So there is a suggestion that I guess most of us, like undergrad students currently, we'll all have projects to work during our educational work, and there'll always be 1 or 2 ideas, 1 or 2 projects that we feel, yes, this is a thing that actually will take humanity forward. There is like we just have those ideas that passion, like this is the thing. But then most of the cases when we speak to people, it's from their perspective we just get to know that maybe that is already adapted somewhere else, not adopted somewhere else, or like, so how in some cases we actually have genuinely good ideas. So how can a person approach, like whom can a person approach to further their ideas or build over them?
It's finding those right people. It requires confidence more than anything else, because those people are there. Those people will be in your immediate environment, and when you have a great plan that will radicalize the industry or the business, as Martinez was saying, you have to do your research, because sometimes an idea looks like the best idea in the world, and hey, someone else is already doing it. So research before anything else, and then reach out to people, and again, be open for the feedback that you may receive, that either this solution already exists, or that someone tested it and it didn't work, or whatever there might be. But you have to involve others. You have to receive that feedback in order to learn and in order to adjust your plans.
So I would add to what Valentin was saying is about just diving into the subject. So that's how you sell your idea to somebody else, because obviously you have to get sold yourself on the project or company that you're working on. So in the beginning stages, you need to dive right in, again, fully committed to get absorbed with the information topics, and become an expert to some degree. So because what happens in a situation, especially times like these with the COVID, with a lot of business of fluctuating, we see companies established 90-30 going underwater in a week. So times are very uncertain for a lot of people and a lot of businesses. So I'm pretty sure the idea that somebody is going to pitch is going to be for the money, right? So that's potentially going to be a VC, angel investor, or a business owner, right, where they're going to be trying to raise some money. So in those uncertain times, again, if you absorb yourself, again, information and the topic that you're looking, to develop the company, and with that certainty, if you go to the meeting, if the person's certainty, your certainty is here, and that person's certainty is here, because of your certainty, you will be able to raise that person's certainty as well. And that's how the ideas get solved. So I do agree with Valentin. It's just getting full into the subject that you're looking to develop.
Yeah, and placing yourself as an expert is at the end, when you will be in a position to sell your solution or your product, is the best way to sell it. You don't need to convince anyone. You don't need to push it like, okay, buy it because this is this. Just talk about your topics so that you are mastering the topics, the subject, and you are providing great value about what you talk. And then on one-to-one selling people, it will work most of the time.
So it's more like the only thing that is worse than starting something and failing is not starting at all, based on all that you spoke. Yes. So those are all invaluable insights that you all provided for the whole of entrepreneurial endeavors that we've planned up. And also, like, moving on to the collaboration aspect of all such startups, how do you feel like, for example, we've got a business pitch that another startup offers. So how do you solidify the whole, like, that collaboration? I hope you got my question.
I didn't get it.
I mean, like,
So
yes.
if two companies are developing their own projects, and if they're looking to collaborate, how do you find the middle, right? That's kind of the question. So again, it depends. It depends what the company is working on at that time, and if that fits your business module at that time. Because obviously, as we spoke, companies develop through the time, and things might change in the company. So it depends. But as most of the time, coming back to what I said, just like in marriage, go on a couple of dates. Go on a couple of dates and find out if those are the right people, because that's where the problems are going to start. Because business is actually easy, right? People have been doing business for hundreds of years. But when people get involved, that's when it becomes difficult, right? So that's why you need to go on those dates and actually understand that these people can become our partners. So that will be kind of the main thing.
Yeah, I guess it depends on the type of business that you're in, exactly as Martinez is saying. It's also a matter of choice. I mean, the business that I'm in the online marketing business for space. I do this on my own. I want to do this on my own on a freelance basis because I don't want the burden of running a company with many employees. And what I do is I make myself part of a network. I'm a specialist in doing online marketing. So I do social media, I do blogging, I do outreach and promotion for that. If I need video, I know people who can do professional video and I bring them in. If I need professional photographers, I'll bring them in. If I need podcasters, I will bring them in. So I make sure I'm part of a network of professionals that think similar to me, that all work for themselves, and we form sort of a network where we can all bring each other in. And for me, for my business, that works. If you're building a satellite, or if you're building a rocket, that might be a whole different story. You can't really get it alone. So it really depends on your business, but you always need others to get further. You need other ideas to challenge yourself and to keep challenging, to get the feedback and to reach those bigger achievements that you're looking for.
Yeah, and I would add that in my specific business, I have a two level of collaboration, especially for sales. Regarding the small contract and the nanosatellite operators, I can have a content strategy and a growth hacking strategy like in any other business, mainly, where I can get some leads from the market by a good image and a good sales team. And for bigger and more and deeper topics, I need, in that case, some trustful relay on site. So I work with a business facilitator in the Middle East, in India, in US, because and we are still in space business. I bring a simplification of space business, and I think things should be easy, but still we come from far regarding that aspect, and I still need some like concrete people with a good lobbyist networking on site, so that they can bring me the good collaboration partner and clients.
Yes. So if I want to wrap that up, like first thing I would say is each one of you had your own take on the whole topic. Like for example, we had Valentin saying, "Do not assume, ask." And we also had Martin saying, like, if you've got a problem, like chase a problem, find a solution. Maybe research, or like the way you approach it might be different, but then you must like stay on to it. And finally, like with Remco also saying that passion starts, as I've already mentioned before. Passion is there, and some people just have to keep it going over a long time. Like if you want to stay invested in something, you just need to have that passion, or have people that are passionate enough. So if you lose passion, you just like gain that again. Yes. So with that, I want to wrap up the whole panel discussion, mini panel discussion what we had, but then which was exponential again with your insights, all of your insights, Mr. Remco, Mr. Martinez, and Mr. Valentin. Thank you again for being on the platform, and I now hand it over back to Devendra. Thank you. Over to you, Ramana. So I guess that will be a wrap up of today's session that we had. That is the
Is
entrepreneurial
it audible?
endeavors. Yes, yes, Ramana. So I guess
Am I audible,
this.
Vishesh?
Yes, Ramana, you are audible. Just the network playing with us. It's fine. Yes, you're audible.
Sorry for the network issues, but am I audible?
Okay, so with that, we conclude with the whole of entrepreneurial endeavors. I thank each one of you. That's the first speakers that we've got, Mr. Remco, Mr. Valentin, and also Mr. Martinez for joining us and providing their thoughts and providing their opinions on how one can start off with a startup, start off the startup, yes, and then move ahead with being like on being an amazing or a successful entrepreneur. With that, I'd also want to thank our sponsors, that is GenX Space. GenX Space is an edtech company which strives in spreading the education, the space education among people. And with that, we've got the next sponsor, that is The Space, who is the official merchandise sponsor of ISRO. And with that, we wrap up this session for Entrepreneurial Endeavors, that is October 16th. Thanking everyone who attended the session, that is on YouTube or various platforms. Thank you again for being there. And join us tomorrow on, that is October 17th, for the closing ceremony of Outreach Program 2021. We have an amazing set of speakers with Dr. Anand Narayan, NASA Space Biology postdoctoral fellow at Florida State University. We've got Samir today, in charge officer, that's public outreach at Ayuka. And we've also got Sujay Sridhar, co-founder and chairman of SSERD. So join us tomorrow for this amazing session that we'll be having at 6 p.m. No, 5:30 p.m. IST. Sorry for that. Half an hour delay. Yes, join at 5:30 p.m., not 6. Thank you again. Have an amazing time.